Hi there and welcome back. This lesson and the next three lessons are essentially interconnected to each other. So I really suggest that you try to do all of these four together at the same time. And these are actually very, very important lessons. These are important concepts and important techniques and things that you have to really master them. So what are these? These are about view controllers. So far, everything that we have made, they were actually elements of a view controller. They were being shown to us inside one view controller. You can think of view controllers as web pages. Imagine you go to a website and you have a page for a home and you have a page for product and you have a page for services and a page for contact us. View controllers are somehow a similar thing, that for each of those pages you would need a view controller. So a view controller contains everything for a certain view and also provides interactivity. It lets you tap on a text field and enter a value, or click on a button and run a function, so on and so forth. So in this very first lesson of view controllers, we are going to do something very simple, and that is just adding one new view controller to our app. So let's go to Xcode. In here, I'm going to close this project. I'm going to start another one and call it view controllers app. And once it is good and ready, I'm going to go to my storyboard, and this thing that we have in here so far, this is essentially our view controller. This is a view controller that is connected to a class also called view controller. Don't be confused by the names of them. These names are just things that we have given them. This doesn't have to be called a view controller. It could be called a home view controller or main view controller, anything of the sorts. But the type UI view controller, which is the type that is the superclass in here, that has to stay. And this is the view controller, the visual side of it, that is connected to that class. So for now, just so that we don't make things overly complicated, I'm going to add one more view controller. And I'm going to find a way to navigate from one to another one. So let's go ahead in here, and I'm going to say up there, give me a new view controller. So as you can see now, I have two view controllers side by side. And in order to make sure that they somehow are different from each other, I'm going to change the background color of either of them. If you open this little view on the left side of your interface builder by pressing that little button at the very bottom of the screen, you can see the construct of each of these view controllers. This is essentially the hierarchy of that scene. This is one view controller scene, and this is another view controller scene, and each of them have some objects. They have a view controller, they have a view, they have a first responder, so on and so forth. Now, the thing that I want to do is I want to select their view, and that is by just clicking in here, and I want to go there and change their background color. So one of them becomes green, and then the other one, I'm going to make it become some sort of a yellowish color. So far I've managed to have two view controllers that they seem quite identical, except that there is some differences between them. The most notable difference is this little guy. There is a little arrow that goes into the green one but doesn't go to the yellow one. And if I select my yellow one and go up here and say this one is initial view controller, that little arrow comes in here. I could, drag it over and drop it to the other one, and now this one becomes the initial view controller. Let's see what that means. I'm going to push this to the yellow one and run my application. As you have undoubtedly guessed, now we will see the yellow view controller because that's the initial one. And if I push this back to the green one and I rerun my application, of course, this time we're going to see the green view controller showing up. So that little arrow essentially says which view controller is my initial or a starting point for this application. Now that I've done that, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to add a button. I'm going to drag it in here and I'm going to place it somewhere in there. I'm going to say it's got a yellowish, the same yellowish background, and it says, let's, that's not how you type it, let's go to yellow. So this button is now meant to take us to the other view controller, and we accomplish that by doing something called a segue. Now I'm going to draw a segue by holding the control button and dragging over to my other view controller. And in here, I'm going to say the action segue is show. At some point down the track, I will talk to you about the different controls and different types of segues. But for now, we're going to go with the default one, that is show, which means whenever you press the yellow one, we will end up here. So let's see how that works. Perfect. It takes us to the yellow one. And if I select that little segue, I can actually go in here and look at, some of the settings that is in here. For instance, I can change the kind to be present modally. And in the presentation modally, I can change the transition to be, I don't know, something like a flip horizontal. Let's see how that works. So now when I tap, it flips itself horizontally and it lands us in the yellow side. Now, let's imagine we want to have another view controller. So I'm going to repeat this entire process once again. I'm going to have another view controller. I'm going to add it in here. This is my third view controller. In an intermediate application, you usually have something about 10 to 15 view controllers, depending on the complexity and depending on the nature of your application. So here I'm going to go ahead and add another button. Let's make the background in here red. So the background is pink. Why not? And then I'm going to say, give me a button in here. And this button, I'm going to say it is like that. Go to pink. All right. And the go to pink, just so that it makes more sense, it is actually pink itself. And the way it works is I hold the control button and I drag it over here and I say action segue show. And now if we run our application, I'm sure you can guess it, that from the green one you can go to the yellow one, and from the yellow one we can go to the pink one. Of course, each of them is using a different kind of transition. So what did we do? Let me delete that last one and let me delete that one. So what we have done so far is that we added a view controller, we added a button, and we added a segue between them by holding the control button and dragging over to the next window or to the next view controller. Now, what we also need to do is we need to be able to program on this view controller. That view controller, we already had the files for it and we were able to program for it. This one, we still are not able to do that. Imagine I wanted to do this. Imagine I wanted to have a button that in here takes me back. And I'm going to say go back. And in my go back, I'm going to say background is green. I cannot use a segue to go back again. What I have to do is I have to programmatically dismiss my view controller. And that's something we are going to see in our next lesson. We're going to see how we can program things in here. Because if you think about it, this button belongs to the green view controller, which by default was connected to view controller H and view controller M. So how are we going to program something for the yellow one? How can another set of files appear here that are going to help us connect this view controller, the yellow one, to another group of files? That we're going to discuss and we're going to find out in our next lesson. Keep it up to here, and like I said, it would really help if you do these lessons back to back, because view controllers are such large topics and I'm trying to jam as much as I can into these 4 lessons so you get a sense of a functioning application in a very short span of time. So with that in mind, let's move on to the next lesson.